Dan Illman, David Aragona, taking a look at race number 5 at Belmont Park on closing weekend Saturday. Really nice card at Belmont with 4 graded stakes races, including 2 grade 1s on turf. And then you've got the grade 2 Suburban, a race with a ton of history. $350,000 is the purse. We're going a mile and a quarter. Let's take a peek at this field. And David, isn't this a make or break race for the 4 Charge It, who came into 2023 with such high hopes behind him? And I think it's fair to say that he's underperformed a bit.
For sure. He was a horse that looked like anything was possible after he won that Dwyer last year by 23 lengths with a 111 buyer, and just has not gotten back to that performance since then, has lost some races that I think people expected him to win. And against this field, 3 to 5 on the morning line, he's supposed to show up and win.
He is taking a huge class drop. He's coming off of a triple-digit buyer performance against Cody's Wish, arguably the best horse in the country, and he might have the best speed of this field. As we take a look at our Timeform US pace projector, Charge It can make the lead in here. Unbridled Bomber is a horse that I think is going to appreciate stretching out in distance, and I think he can be close to the pace as well. It's not like there are really any true one-run plotting types in here. Maybe Tonal Impact will take back and try to make one run, but I think this field could either be well bunched early or Charge It might just try to run and gun. I'm not sure your opinion on that.
Yeah, I think it depends on how they want to approach this with Charge It. John Velasquez obviously is going to be on a horse that has plenty of natural speed, but will they back down the pace being worried about him getting the 10 furlong distance? Or like you said, will they try to open up a little bit and just discourage some of the other competition bossing around a field? Because he does look like the best horse on paper. I'll be interested to see how it plays out, but I do agree with you that the number 5 Unbridled Bomber really seems like the only candidate to potentially apply pressure if they're not super aggressive with Charge It.
Tonal Impact, the number 1, a very fine claim for trainer Linda Rice. Took this horse for $40,000 last fall, and he's very consistent. He's hit the board in his last 12 races, including this victory going a 1-turn mile. Now, it looked to me for a brief instant on the turn, David, that Tonal Impact was being outrun a little bit, and then he just grinds this field down in a manner of a horse that I really think is going to appreciate stretching out and getting more distance to work with on Saturday.
This horse is solid. He's been improving with most of his recent starts. He's just run good races and really nothing but since getting into the Linda Rice barn at the end of last year. I'm not so sure about the distance for him. They tried to go much longer with him over the winter at Aqueduct. He went as far as 1 3/8 miles in a starter allowance race, was a disappointing loser at a short price that day. He's a horse that is kind of a one-run closer by nature, and sometimes those horses prefer shorter races with more pace. So I'll be interested to see how his grinding style works going this longer distance with not a whole lot of pace seemingly in the field.
The number 2 is Red Run, and we've seen this before from trainer Michael Maker. Usually on the turf, he claims one and he changes distances, usually stretching them all the way out, and they do well, and it's done well for Red Run. He hasn't gotten to the winner's circle yet, but he's earned a couple of stakes placings, and even third last time out in the grade 2 Brooklyn, going a mile and a half. Maybe he'll be the one as well to take back with Tonal Vision and try to make one run. Curious to see how his mile and a half form translates, turning back to a mile and a quarter against a horse like Charge It.
Yeah, I mean, if you draw a line through those 2 mile-and-a-half races, he looks like a 20-1 or greater shot in here. I mean, he's just not really competitive based on his form over conventional route distances, but he obviously took a big step forward using that stamina to be effective going a mile and a half. This is 2 furlongs shorter than that. He's just sort of a grinder type. We'll see if he's as effective going this distance, but definitely has some things to prove.
The number 3, Clapton, is an underrated type. He was beaten by Charge It down at Gulfstream over the winter, but he earned a graded stakes victory in the Ghost Sapper at a big price 2 starts back. He was tested a bit last time out in the Pimlico Special for distance as well as class, and he was over in behind horses turning into the stretch. He just couldn't finish with the top 2. At least the winner of this race, Rattle and Roll, has come back to flatter the race by winning the Blame and then running an excellent second in the Stephen Foster. Clapton was game to get third in the final 16th behind the tiring law professor.
Yeah, I don't mind this horse's races at all. He's just really taken a step forward. As a 4-year-old, he ran that big speed figure behind Charge It in that optional claiming race earlier in the year, but he's shown that that form was no fluke since then. I mean, the last 2 races are both good, and like you said, Rattle and Roll, I mean, it's no disgrace looking to him recently. He's just been in razor-sharp form, and based on the way he finished up 1 3/16 miles last time, maybe a mile and a quarter is within his scope.
Last year at this time at Belmont, Charger was coming off of a win in the Dwyer, winning by 23 lengths or so. And then unfortunately for Todd Pletcher and the Connections, they just couldn't get this horse right the rest of the year. He missed the entire rest of the fall and into the winter. He came back in his first race at Gulfstream, was good. And then when he got beat by a horse that was coming off of a rather long losing streak, and then his Oaklawn handicap wasn't that great. And I don't think we were expecting the world in the Met Mile, but he was sort of grinding up to the leaders turning into the stretch, and Cody's Wish just ran right by him. I was a little bit disappointed with that performance from Charge It. I'm a little worried about the 1.25 miles as well as his inconsistency.
Yeah, he's a horse that just hasn't gotten back to those heights that he achieved as a 3-year-old so far this year. And I mean, he's lost to some horses that he wasn't supposed to lose to in the last few starts. And let's not be too hard on him for losing the Met Mile, but we just saw some of his antics that day. He broke with the field, but then was a little sluggish those first few strides out of the gate. And that could be a habit for this horse. And that just put him behind the 8 ball early. I mean, he's supposed to be in front here regardless of how he breaks, because there's not a whole lot of speed in here. But despite being a son of Tappet, I do wonder how far he really wants to go. He's not always finishing that well in his longer races. He can be a little goofy, and he's just not a horse that I'm inclined to take a super short price on.
Unbridled Bomber really got good towards the end of last year, especially in 1.125 races down at Aqueduct. And then in the Queens County, things didn't work out. Maybe it was the wet track. Supposedly he wasn't feeling all right going into that race as well. I'm willing to draw a line through that race. He bounces back with a really good-looking win in a one-turn mile. And while his Westchester might not look great on paper, I thought he ran okay. And this is the kind of horse that I believe wants more distance. And if Charge It can't stay, maybe Unbridled Bomber sort of grinds him down late.
Yeah, I think there are things to like about Unbridled Bomber in this race. I often think that. I'm the president of the Unbridled Bomber fan club, but this horse has really gotten good over the past 6 months or so. I mean, he won those 2 allowance races at Aqueduct last year, going longer distances, 1.125 miles, 1 3/16, like the 1.25 miles is not supposed to be a big problem. You mentioned the excuse that he had in the Queens County, and also last time in the Westchester, he was coming back in just 3 weeks after putting forth that huge allowance score at Aqueduct, earning that 99 buy or 2 back. So that might have just been asking a little too much for him. Now he's had 2 months between races. I don't think the 1.25 miles is a big problem for him, and he's supposed to get that perfect trip sitting off Charge It.
Let's take a look at our top picks for the Suburban. President of the Unbridled Bomber fan club. I'll be the secretary. I'll go with him as well. I just think the price is going to be right. I think the trip is going to be there. Listen, Charge It's probably supposed to win if he just gets to the lead and backs this down. But would you really be surprised if he loses at odds on? I wouldn't be. I think Unbridled Bomber might be the right price play.
Yeah, I'm just a little against Charge It here. I think Unbridled Bomber is definitely a candidate. And even Clapton, who could be one of the bigger prices on the line. He's just been in solid form recently. Also one that I want to keep tabs on if his price drifts up.
5-3-4-1 for David, 5-4-3-1 for me. We'll see if Charge It gets back into form for Todd Pletcher and John Velasquez. He's going to go off a big favorite in the Suburban.